Hey guys, welcome to the Massive Iron Channel. I'm Steve Shaw. In this video, I'm going to be reacting to Greg Doucette's video, How Much Muscle Can You Build Naturally? Before I get into this topic, if you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. The best topic ideas I turn into videos just like this. If you need coaching, check out the link down below. I'd love to help. And don't forget, every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern here on the YouTube's Massive Iron Live. All right, so one of my clients sent me this. I haven't watched the video yet. Natural muscle building potential is an area of study that I've devoted a lot of my life to. I'm not the top expert in the world, but I'm very obsessed with the subject and I've studied it extensively. So I want to hear what he has to say in this video. I really have no idea what's covered in this video, so I'm just going to react. Let me know what you guys think about the video and my comments. Let's get into things. How much muscle can you build naturally?
I guess I should also mention, they didn't lift weights in this study. Zero lifting.
How many of you think that if you took 600 milligrams of testosterone for 20 weeks that you would actually put on 20 pounds of muscle without lifting weights?
All right, so 600 milligrams and 20 pounds of muscle. I don't think so. I've been around the block enough, around enough folks to know that if you're taking that much, you're probably going to put on maybe 10 pounds.
Coach Greg, in today's video, I'm going over what Jeff Nippard thinks or pretends to know about how much muscle you can build natural versus enhanced.
All right, we'll see what you pretend to know, Greg, since you played that card.
Remember, Jeff is, as I've always stated, 100% natural. In comparison, I was natural, did 42 shows, 100% natural, and then went enhanced. And so I know exactly how much muscle I built natural versus enhanced, and I've coached thousands of athletes, both natural.
Oh, thousands. I've been coaching full-time. Let me frame that. I've been coaching full-time for quite a while, and I'm probably approaching 1,000 clients. So thousands, wow.
Natural and enhanced, and so I do believe I'm highly qualified to talk about this topic.
Well, coaching folks and studying natural potential are two different things. But to be fair, Greg does have a functional understanding of how big naturals can get. So I don't doubt that.
5 years, I gained around 20 pounds of muscle. Over the next 5 years, I put on a little more muscle, but not as much, only another 5 pounds or so. Then in the next 5 years after that, it was even less.
And so
Jeff is on track. I've studied Dr. Casey Butt's information. He did extensive studies on natural champions. Basically, what we've come up with, what he came up with, is that whatever your natural potential is, and generally for the average male that's not underweight, you have about 30 to 35 pounds of mass to build over the course of your life. And whatever you have left, you have about half, you have the potential to build about half of that during the coming year. Now, Nippard said he gained about 20 pounds early, and then it was down to 5, and then it was basically nothing. So it shakes out pretty close to that 30-pound mark, give or take. We're not getting into the nuts and bolts of the information. So Nippard was on track as far as overall muscle built and the rate of decay. So he was very reasonable. Let's see what Greg has to say.
Jeff makes a great point. In the first several years of training, you're going to get the majority of your gains. After that, those newbie gains are over, and it's going to get harder than last time. But
Greg kind of dumbs it down. He hasn't studied the science, I can tell. He hasn't studied the information, which is fair. That's not a dig on him. He just dumbs it down a little bit in the Greg manner, but he understands that early on in your lifting career, you're going to gain most of your mass if you're training hard, but it's not just newbie gains. It's simply a normal rate of decay. It's going to be expedited early on, and then the further in you go, it's just going to decrease.
But it doesn't mean you can't continue to build muscle. And throughout this video, he uses examples of himself, and Chris Bumstead, for example, talks about how much muscle they first put on when they first started training. But remember this, if you're going through puberty, a lot of those gains are going to take place even without training. And so
If you're going, this is underway. I don't know why we went here, but a lot of the gains aren't going to take place. This is normalization of body weight. So I'm not really sure why we need to bring this up. Individuals that are underweight or haven't reached a normalized male or female body weight, for that matter, they're going to add more muscle. That's not muscle building. That's just maturing. That's your body naturally maturing. So this isn't muscle building. You are underweight with everything, muscle, bones, height. So I'm really not sure why this was brought up.
So, for example, when I started training, I weighed 80 pounds. I was 10. And by the time I was 18, I was competing on stage at 140 plus pounds. And so I put on well over 60 pounds of muscle.
No, you did not, Greg. You did not put on 60 pounds of muscle. You started at 80 pounds, and I can't believe you just said this. Greg, this is ridiculous. You started at 80 and you competed at 140. That's not all muscle, Greg. When you're 10 years old and 80 pounds and go from that to where you are in this picture, Greg, that's not 60 pounds of muscle. You're smarter than that. Let's be smarter than last time, Greg. Sorry, just being fair here, but you grew in height, you added bone size, you added organ size, you matured. That's not all muscle, Greg.
And so, depending on when you start training, this is going to have a huge impact on the potential for muscle you can build.
No, you still have the same potential. If you start at an underweight, a position where you're underweight, you are not going to just build more muscle than the guy next to you. Your body weight is going to normalize, whether through puberty or bringing your body weight up. If you have two men that are 20 years old, and one is 132 pounds and the other is 182 pounds, and the 132 pound individual is underweight, this isn't just muscle mass, it's bone density, it's lower fat stores, it's less blood, it's less everything, right? When we mature, it's not just muscle that we add. This is a ridiculous statement. So if somebody is underweight, they do not have the potential to build more muscle. When their body is normalizing, yes, they're going to add some muscle to their frame because they are under muscled, because they are underweight. This isn't the potential to gain more. They're just going to get back up to speed with the guy next to them that was normal to start with.
The earlier you start training, the more gains you can expect to make.
No, that's absolutely not true. This is complete ignorance, and it is so far off target.
The later you start training, the less gains you can expect.
Where are you getting this from, Greg? Absolutely nonsense. This has no impact on how much muscle you build. Again, if you start underweight and you catch up to the guy next to you that's at a more normal weight, then you're going to be at a level playing field. Somebody that's really old, maybe in their 60s when they start, might have a lower potential. Maybe it's going to be lower just because they can't handle the heavier weight, or physiologically they just can't keep up. But still, I mean, to be fair, the average person in the gym might only gain 20 pounds, would be happy to gain 20 pounds of mass. So a 60-year-old even that gains 20 pounds of mass is going to look amazing. But they still have, on paper, they still physiologically are playing the same game. They have the same potential. They're not different creatures. They don't have different physiologies as they age.
If you start training at 10, don't think you can only put on 30 or 40 pounds of muscle. But
well, of course, you're underweight.
Start training at 40, you're probably not going to put on 30 or 40 pounds of muscle.
And research backs this up. Studies show that men tend to max out their natural potential after gaining 20 to 40 pounds or 9 to 18 kilos of muscle mass.
Now, 40 is really at the high end from what we understand of the research. And this is a huge variance. I mean, I respect, a lot of men are only, a 20-pound gain is very reasonable. 40 would be at the super high end, and probably someone that starts underweight. From our understanding, it's usually, if you start at a more normalized weight, about 30 to 35 pounds of mass. 32 is a more reasonable average goal, and that's a lot of mass. 40, I've never seen anybody really gain 40. Again, they would have to start a little bit underweight, and some of that weight would be normalization of their body weight.
And so once you become an adult, perhaps you're 20 years of age, you can expect to put on 20 to 40 pounds of muscle. Now, if you were a gymnast, you've been training your entire life up to that point, you start training at 20, probably not going to put on 20 to 40 pounds.
What? If you're starting at age 20 as a gymnast, you're probably not going to put on 20 to 40. Well, a gymnast has probably put on some muscle to begin with. So, I mean, if we're looking at the platform, when you start at ground zero, when you start at like the average mass of the average individual, and a gymnast puts on maybe 5 pounds of mass doing calisthenics and whatever else they're doing, maybe a little bit of weightlifting, they will have that same potential. Why would they lose that potential? That muscle they've added just comes out of that, what the number pool they're using, the 20 to 40.
But if you've been a gamer your entire life, you haven't done anything, or you've undereaten, for example, you're anorexic your entire life, you may in fact be able to put on a lot more than 40.
A gamer might be able to put on a lot more than 40. Greg, I don't know about you, but most of the gamers I've seen are pretty funkalicious, right? They're not exactly like, yeah, they're skinny fat, but they're at a normalized body weight. These are the people that should set the standard of about 30 to 32 pounds of mass. They're at a normalized male body weight. The only difference between them and the gymnast is the gymnast might have a few more pounds of muscle that they've already earned, but both men or both individuals have the same potential, the same total potential. If the gymnast starts at 167 pounds and they've already built 5 pounds of muscle, they still have the potential to build 25 to 27 more pounds of muscle. If the gamer is just sitting in that chair and he's just like a normal man, he still has the potential to gain 30 to 32 pounds of muscle. It doesn't change at all. The only thing that changes is the muscle you have gets deducted from this total.
And so that 20 to 40 pounds is for the average person, the average adult who's been moderately active. If you're a couch potato,
no, it's not moderately active, right? It has no bearing on if you're active or inactive. It has bearing on whether you have any existing muscle. We all have that potential to gain about 30 to 32 pounds of muscle, maybe 35 tops if you're a super freak. So the only way that's going to change is if you've added a little bit of muscle, then you've already dipped into that pool. Beyond that, there'll be some differences between individuals. Greg might have been more genetically blessed and maybe carried around 2 to 3 more pounds of mass at the same weight that I did at the same age. So he had a little bit of a head start, but physiologically, the body is still set up to hold about the same amount of muscle mass potential, one person to the next. So these guys are not going to be different. The only thing that's going to differ between them is one might have a few more pounds of muscle at the beginning, but they both have the same potential.
You did nothing and you have great genetics, you might put on way more than 40 pounds. You
will not put on way more than 40 pounds.
On 80 pounds.
80 pounds? Oh, we're going to put on 80 pounds now. Do you know how ridiculous this is? Greg, you cannot go back to I started at 10 years old and 80 pounds. That's not all muscle. Look, this is what confuses me about Greg. I'm not trying to dig at him. I'm not trying to claw at him. In general, a lot of what Greg puts out is good information, but this is horrible information. This is absolutely ignorant. And I don't understand, Greg. I really don't understand why you believe a 10-year-old with 80 pounds of muscle has a potential to gain 80 pounds of muscle. Their body is normalizing. They're undersized. They're underboned. They're underblood. They're underorganed. Everything in their body is underweight, undersized. That's not 80 pounds of muscle, Greg.
And to the opposite extent, if you've been training your entire life, for example, Coach Greg started at 10, and you start looking at how much muscle you put at 20, you may not even put on the 20 pounds.
No, I really don't know what to say here. I mean, if you start at 10, you're going to start to build some muscle above that normalization point. So if a 10-year-old starts at 80 pounds and he's underweight, he's yet to go through puberty, he could potentially gain some additional muscle than what he was going to gain normally going through puberty, right? That's bonus muscle. That's part of the pie that you're going to get from the 30 to 32 to 35 pounds of muscle you're going to build naturally. That comes out of that pie, Greg.
And so, one thing you have to understand is with studies, they can only tell you what the study showed. Do you really think they had 1,000 participants and they followed them for 20 years, their entire lifetime?
Well, I will tell you this. Dr. Casey Butt's research has been extensive, and he studied hundreds of natural champions. We do understand where they top out. And from this data and from normalized body weights, we can come up with a reasonable understanding of what the average male gains.
And they trained harder than last time with proper diet, nutrition, supplementation, everything. And that was the range of muscle that they put on, 20 to 40 pounds. Or do you think they just extrapolate? Perhaps they took some photos, took some quality.
Well, I can't speak about this specific study, but we do know in general what the range of muscle mass potential is from a normalized body weight. And, I think, he's referencing Dr. Casey Butt here.
Or quantitative data and made an analysis and said this is probably what's going to happen, but that does not show what can really happen in the real world. And
well, look, the fact that he's referencing Dr. Casey Butt and doesn't understand the depth of his research and the energy and effort put into what Dr. Casey Butt did, he's being extremely dismissive and not doing due diligence to what this research actually is. This isn't just some random study. Dr. Casey Butt understood a natural potential more than anyone I know of. He dedicated his early life to it. And this is not just some random study of 1,000 people. Dr. Casey Butt spent his life studying this stuff, and it's extremely reasonable. When you look at his data, when you look at how he studied all of these natural potential, how he studied all of these top natural bodybuilders over the course of 60 years, his natural potential numbers, the weight predictor at the end of the road, which is really what this is about, your height, your bone size, where you're going to get at the end of the road at a certain body fat percentage. If you look at what Dr. Casey Butt put together and his formula and his prediction formula, you can predict Reg Park. You can predict Steve Reeves. He predicted their body weight generally within 1 pound. This information is rock solid. Is any information without error? No. But Dr. Casey Butt's information is about as good as it gets. It's about as rock solid of research and science as you're going to get. So what Dr. Casey Butt did was he took these natural potential numbers of all these natural bodybuilders. He took the best of the best natural champions. He found where they kind of cap out in a generic way of phrasing it. And from that, he kind of figured out that from a normalized body weight, not an underweight individual, you have a potential to gain about 30 to 32, maybe even 35 pounds of mass if you're a little bit taller and big boned. This isn't crap science. The fact that Greg doesn't know this, that Greg hasn't done his research, is very telling to me.
And so in comparison, I've actually done this myself. I've experimented. I've gone in the trenches. I've coached all the people. And so we're going to go over the conclusions that Jeff found in his research, but I'm also going to be critical of what he said. And so there's never been a study ever in this world where they've actually taken a natural versus an enhanced athlete and trained them for 20.
So now here we're changing the narrative a little bit, and changing it to natural versus enhanced.
20 years and seeing exactly how much muscle they could put on. And so all this is a guess, an educated guess, but remember,
So I think he's going back to the fact that Nippard said you put somebody on 600 milligrams of testosterone over, 20 weeks, and they're going to gain 20 pounds of muscle. And he said it's a guess. Well, look, Greg, I'm going to be fair. You've been around this your entire life. I have spent my life in the industry. I worked in the supplement industry. I've I've worked with everybody you can think of, from John Meadows to West Siders to major YouTubers. I've trained with Ronnie Coleman. I've met Jay Cutler. I've helped these guys develop content in one way or the other. I've been around these guys, and I've been around a lot of guys that have gone on cycle, gone off cycle. I've seen, these guys would tell you unsolicited in your office what they take. And when Nippard says someone that hops on 600 milligrams of test has a potential to gain about 20 pounds in 20 weeks, it's really not that far off. And from what I have seen, guys that hop on the TRT train, and it's 200 to 250 milligrams, they have the potential, from what I've seen, to add 10 to maybe 5 to 10 pounds of mass, 5 to 8. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit of a bump. We could probably just call it 5 pounds. The guys that bump up to like 500 to 600, they're probably going to be at least 10. I don't know about 20. 20 seems a little bit high. But from the guys I know that have walked into my office that talked about taking 500 to 600 milligrams, they were all about 5 pounds, 7 pounds at least bigger than me. And they all probably had about an 8 to 10 pound bump at least. So Nippard's numbers might be a little bit high, but they're not too far off.
They guess. And so although this is based on science, it's a guess.
If you do all of this for 5 to 10 years, you'll almost certainly gain 20 to 40 pounds of muscle and come pretty close to maximizing your natural potential.
Well, I started at 10, and by the time I was 20, I was competing in the 140s. And so, did I come close to my natural potential? No, I competed for...
No, because you started underweight, Greg. Why do you keep pulling this ridiculous card? You are not at your natural potential here because you started underweight, 10 years old and 80 pounds. A 10-year-old, you at 10 years and 80 pounds, and then you, after finishing puberty, if you had never lifted, you'd probably be about, let's just say age 18 and 150 pounds. You would have got to 150, Greg, without any training. That's the way it works. That's not all muscle.
For 10 more years. And so in 10 extra years, I still put on well over 20 extra pounds of muscle. But how is that possible?
How's it possible? Because it's normal, natural potential, Greg. You did not put on 80 pounds of muscle. You started from an underweight. Good grief. This is so ridiculous. I can barely tolerate it.
As in 10 years, you come close to your natural genetic potential. Well, consider this. The first 10 years of training, I was very young. And not to mention, I was doing a shit ton of cardio. I was a competitive triathlete, sometimes doing 20 hours of cardio a week. And so if you're limiting your growth potential by doing excessive amounts of cardio, you are going to extend that growth curve. And so please...
No, you're never going to limit your potential by doing cardio. You could probably over cardio to the point where you're not recovering and not building at an optimal rate, but you're not going to limit your potential. So let's just make sure that we drop that in there.
Not think that just because you've been training for 5 or even 10 years, that you have no more gains left in the tank, that you've achieved your natural genetic potential. I never hit my genetic limit until I was in my early 30s, and I started training at the age of 10.
This is Alex Leonidas, who put on roughly 40 pounds of muscle in 13 years of lifting. He's also done several extended.
I wouldn't call that 40 pounds of muscle in my experience. It's probably more like 30, but I don't know if Alex started from an underweight, as an underweight individual.
Bulks, where he's got as high as 200 pounds at around 20% body fat.
How could it be that Alex Leonidas, who would have been at 200 pounds with 20% body fat, that means he was 160 pounds with 0% body fat?
So that's pretty close to it. I mean, the natural, from what we look at Dr. Casey Butt's research, someone like myself at 5'10" has the potential to get around 178 to 182 lean body mass or weight without fat. Just if you took all my fat away, my natural muscle building potential would be roughly 178 to 182, according to Dr. Casey Butt. So Alex, at 160, for every inch you go below 5'10", or every inch above, that natural potential number, muscle-wise, will change by 4 to 5 pounds. So 178 to 182 is about where a 5'10" could expect to kind of cap out roughly from a natural muscle building potential. Someone that is 4 inches shorter, and I don't know his height, but he would have to be if he was 4 to 5 inches shorter, his natural potential would be around 160, which makes sense. I don't think Alex is 5'10" like me. So 160 is well under the potential for a 5'10" individual. That would put him right around the max natural potential for someone that is 5'5" or 5'6", which is spot on. The thing I don't understand about this video is why Greg's diving into natural potential on one hand and obsessing with, how much muscle mass you have to gain naturally. And then we go back to the steroid side of things. I see what he's trying to do. He's trying to dismantle Nippard's argument that you can gain about 20 pounds of mass in 20 weeks on 600 milligrams. And I think Greg is actually right. But I do think the vehicle he's using to dismantle the argument is really off the rails. All right, so we're going to stop it here. This has been a lot of rambling, and it's been an interesting video. I hope you guys have learned a few things from this video. I didn't, it's not my intention to, attack people. So I hope you guys will understand. Please don't drop comments thinking I'm trying to attack Greg. I'm not. We're discussing the information to help educate people here. I think Greg is on track. I think that 600 milligrams doesn't have the potential to add 20 pounds of muscle from what I have seen. I think that's pretty inflated, but I don't think it's too far off base. I would probably say more like 10, maybe 12 pounds of quality mass in my experience. And someone on like normal TRT, well, what's normal nowadays, 200 to 250, might be more around 5 to 7. So I don't think Greg is too far off, but I think the vehicle he uses here and how he's framing a lot of natural potential has a lot of holes in it. And at the end of the day, the reason we talk about this information is to educate you guys, to give you guys a reasonable idea of expectations. So guys, let me know what you think. Drop a comment down below. So guys, hope this video has been of some help. If you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. If you made it this far in this video and have yet to subscribe to my channel, please do. I'd appreciate the support. So guys, as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.